Hello, I'm Jonathan Rizzo, here with the Independent Progressive. We shoot interviews here, and we find it important to ask questions of the candidates and politicians in our country, locally, nationally, and everything in between. We find it's important to not be apathetic, I would say, and really take advantage of our power as the people in our country. You know, we take it very seriously, the issues at hand, current events, everything from healthcare to all the national issues at hand, as well as hyper local issues that we can dig into. And today we have a very special guest with us. We're going to be interviewing Stephen Jaffe, running for Congress in California, and he has a very difficult race ahead of him. I got to say that before we get started here. He is going up against the minority leader of the House of Representatives, and I'm very interested to see how he's going to take his approach to the race here. It's coming up fast for him, and I'd like to now hand it over to Stephen Jaffe to introduce himself.
Hello, thank you very much for the opportunity to visit with you and talk to your viewers and listeners. I'm Stephen Jaffe. I'm running for the U.S. Congress in the 12th District of California. My primary opponent is Nancy Pelosi. You're right. John is completely right. It is cosmetically a very difficult race because Ms. Pelosi is extremely firmly entrenched in her position for the last 30 years. However, it's my perception and belief, and those of others, that she is vulnerable at this time. The main reason that she is vulnerable is that she does not speak for her own constituents. The people of San Francisco disagree with Ms. Pelosi on a multitude of critical issues. And the fact that she does not vote their values and wishes and dreams means that they don't have a voice in Congress. And I'm running to give the people of San Francisco a voice in Congress. I don't aspire to be minority leader or any other title other than representative of the 12th District of California. So that's the short version of who I am and what I'm running for.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. Now, you mentioned that she doesn't speak for all of her constituents, much less the people that are in her district, in your district, that may not adhere to your views either. Tell me what you're going to do, if you don't mind. So we'll just start with broad strokes here. What are you going to be doing to really pay attention to the people of California there and make sure that your votes are in line with what's best for the people that live around you, your constituents?
Well, I'm going to continue to do exactly what I've been doing for about the last 4 or 5 years, which is to wear out a lot of pairs of shoes, walking around and talking to constituents. I've been very active in local politics now for the last 4 or 5 years. I'm the president of our local Dem Club here in the neighborhood where I live. I've worked on 3 or 4 different political campaigns, most notably, certainly probably to your audience, Bernie Sanders. I worked very hard on Bernie's campaign, gave him a lot of money. I was recruited by the national campaign because I've been a lawyer for 46 years to go to Nevada to help legally supervise what turned out to be highly chaotic Nevada caucuses, which took months to straighten out after they occurred. So I've had my ear to the ground a long time. Conversely, my opponent, Ms. Pelosi, the phrase I use is that she lives in a bubble of privilege and arrogance. She really is profoundly disconnected and out of touch with her constituents. I could sit here and talk for a week about the issues on which she's disconnected on. The biggest one and the easiest one to talk about is the single payer issue. Medicare for all. 70 to 80% of the people in San Francisco want a single-payer Medicare for all system. Ms. Pelosi not only does not want that, she is the biggest opponent of it in the United States Congress. And that is because she takes a lot of donations from healthcare providers, insurance companies, and big pharmaceutical companies, all of which have a very big stake in preventing single payer from ever becoming law. So she takes this money and then she votes for her donors' interests instead of what her constituents want.
So that's a very interesting point that you bring up there. First of all, obviously about the single-payer healthcare system that is being gone through with a fine-tooth comb these days. But beyond that, I'd like to discuss a little bit about campaign financing. And she's got deep pockets. And can you tell me? You certainly have the resume for the position. Tell me about how you're going to. Your approach to financing your own campaign, and then furthermore, how you see campaign financing in general, and whether you support, just give me a good overview, if you don't mind, of your position on campaign financing.
Well, that's a great question. You are correct. Ms. Pelosi has virtually unlimited money, but that doesn't really answer the question. You have to drill down deeper to what I just mentioned a minute or two ago, which is, where does she get the money?
Exactly.
She gets the money from corporations and institutions who do not have or adhere to values consistent with the Democratic Party. And she uses that money, she doles it out not only for herself, but she doles it out to Democrats in Congress with a string attached. And the string is, here's $1 million for your campaign, Mr. Congressman from whatever state. But you remember, when it comes time to vote the way I want you to, you're going to have to remember where you got that money if you ever want any more in the future. So that's one thing. She doesn't really raise money for herself. She's raising money for corporations to use in ways that I don't think political contributions were ever intended to be raised. So I have 2 points really on your question about public financing. The first is, one of my planks is I believe in public financing of campaigns. That means that politicians would not have to go out and beg for money. That will do a great deal towards leveling the playing field in terms of people like me versus people like Ms. Pelosi. I will be much better financed. A lot of cities do that now. I think I heard that New York may be doing that. I have to educate myself better about that. But I'm for national public financing to take the money out of politics, which will also substantially mitigate the horrible effects of the Citizens United case. So those are the 2 things. The other point I want to make really is a tremendous change in the nature of money in politics. It used to be, not so long ago, about 15 years, even as recently as 10 or 15 years ago, when you raised money in a campaign, the only thing you could really spend it on were television ads. And they were pervasive, and they made a difference. And the more money you got, the more ads you bought, the more people saw them, and the better your campaign did. The world has now changed. Television is no longer the primary source of information for people. What we're doing right now is the primary source of information.
I hope so. I like to think so.
Yeah, it's computers, it's Facebook, it's websites, it's Twitter, it's every single kind of social media that you can imagine is now going out and influencing and reaching millions and millions of people. And that does not cost hardly anything compared to what TV ads cost. So the collection of huge sums of money, while it's still an advantage, no doubt about it, is no longer the big advantage that it used to be. It's been diminished.
You're right. And with I believe her estimated net worth is around $30 million. She has the
Oh,
money.
well, I've seen estimates anywhere between $27 million up to $220 million.
Oof. So,
She's extremely wealthy, and so is her husband.
well, that being said, let's move on to, if you don't mind. I know we're a little short on time tonight, and I want to make sure we get through as many issues as possible, and respect your time as well. Now, I see that you're a democratic socialist, is what the way you put it, right? What is the difference between a democratic socialist and a Democrat? Which Nancy Pelosi is a Democrat. Tell me the difference between those and how you see that, and how progressivism fits in there, independent. A lot of millennials. I don't know if many of them are even affiliated with with one of the two major parties.
All right, let me answer that the best way I can. And I'm going to digress slightly. When I first announced my campaign last April, it wasn't just a matter of weeks where I heard not once, but twice from the last place I ever expected to hear from, Fox National News. Fox National News contacts me and says, we think you should come on, I think, morning, there's one show, Fox in the Morning, I don't know what it's called, and there was another one of their shows. And Fox is about as remote from my politics as it is possible to get. So why do they want me on? Obviously they want me on because they dislike Pelosi a lot more than they dislike me, and they're hoping to get me to say something bad about her, which they weren't able to do. But now I'll get to your question. On one of these guys at Fox, he essentially tries to bait me when he couldn't get anywhere to get me to bash Pelosi because I like to run a positive campaign.
Good.
He says to me, isn't it true you're a socialist? And I said to him, I said, we are all socialists. I said, if you like having Social Security, Medicare, a police department, a fire department, a military, anytime the government takes money and pools it and uses it for the collective good of the community, that is a socialist program. So the short answer, it's become one of my slogans, we're all socialists. The shorter answer is there is no difference between a Democrat and a democratic socialist. Democrats like Ms. Pelosi, who are establishment elitists, think it's a dirty word. I don't. I'm a little more realistic. And programs like single payer, are they socialist? Yes, in the sense that the government is taking its money and using it pooled for the common good. That's not a dirty word. That's a good thing. A library is a socialist program. Everything that the government does is technically, by definition, a socialist program.
A lot of people,
if that be a socialist, so be it. I certainly am.
A lot of people, they wonder, where, people like myself included, where are we going to get the money for these kind of programs, and how are we going to battle this national debt crisis, which is, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars? As a U.S. representative?
That's two questions, okay? So I'll take them one at a time. Firstly, where are we going to get the money? Some of the programs that I'm advocating, including single payer, are actually cheaper than what exists now. Shall I say that again? Because
no,
it's a myth.
Maybe.
I'm saying that it's a myth that this Medicare for All is going to cost more. And how do I say that? Take somebody who's in their 40s or 50s. They are paying hundreds and hundreds, if not a 4-digit number, every month for insurance, health insurance premiums for themselves and for their family, okay? Or the company they work for is paying hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars for health insurance for their employees. With a single payer system, do you know what the health insurance premiums are?
No, what's that?
Zero. No one pays any health insurance premiums. Now, will the taxes go up a little bit? Probably. But when your taxes go up by $200 and you are relieved of a monthly $200, let's say a month, and you are relieved of a monthly health insurance premium of $800 a month, you are now $600 ahead. And that's why it is actually cheaper. And we are the only civilized country in the world which does not provide for the universal health care of its residents and citizens. And these countries are not going broke, and we won't either.
I agree. I certainly agree, and that's yeah, very valid points. And I think we'd all, a lot of our viewers would like to see that happen.
Right.
Now, I'm going to move on again to open internet policy, net neutrality, if you don't mind. And I want to mention it though. I love the fact that you come from the local politics and moving into a more broad national level. I think that's great. I'm such a strong proponent of local, hyper-local politics. It's so important. It really affects everybody's lives. But now you're moving on to these issues that you're in California. They're going to affect people nationally. They're going to affect people in New York and Florida and the Midwest. And so if you don't mind, get into net neutrality, and we'll move on to a bunch of other issues here, and I won't even get into them yet. But immigration, marijuana's legalization, global warming is what I hope to cover today. Homelessness and mental illness as part of the healthcare. But if we can start with net neutrality, if you don't mind.
Well, I am for net neutrality. To me, it's a no-brainer. I don't think, the alternative is just unthinkable and unacceptable to me. And people should have open access to the internet. It's really, it's like public land. I guess the best analogy I could draw, it's like public land that people should have a right to walk around in. And I very strongly support the notion of net neutrality.
Excellent.
What that brings me to mind, a side issue, which is election integrity, but it has something to do with this. One of the parts of the discussion about election integrity is the software which is used to count our votes is proprietary software, and we pay fees to countries, some of them, to vendors, private vendors, some of them outside of the U.S., to count votes in the United States election. I'm for open source software in elections as well, which is kind of a related issue to net neutrality. Everybody should have a clear view of what's going on in our elections.
Which came up in the most recent election. That was we really have quite a ways to go in dealing with counting the votes. Something
Right.
basic, you'd think.
You mentioned mental illness.
Yes, please, let's go back to that.
That's a topic very close to me and important to me. I have someone very close to me who suffers from schizophrenia, and I have been immersed in the mental health community, which is more accurately described as the mental illness community, for about 20 years now. I've run support groups, I've written extensively in newspaper op-ed columns, I've addressed a little over a year and a half ago, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill National Convention up here in San Francisco. I worked very hard for the passage of what's called Laura's Law, modeled after a law called Kendra's Law in New York. So it is time to decriminalize mental illness. Nobody chooses to be mentally ill. And a disproportionate numbers, for example, of unarmed people who are shot and killed by police are mentally ill. And that's because the police are not trained to deal with a mentally ill person when they encounter them on the street. And there are people trained to do it. And if I'm elected to Congress, I will introduce very aggressive laws to train people, crisis intervention teams, so they know what to do when they encounter somebody blabbering away on the street and saying things they don't even understand themselves.
Tell me, how is that different from the way your opponent approaches these issues?
I've never heard her say a word about it.
Glad to hear you say it.
I can honestly say I don't know. I don't think that's something that she has talked very much about. It may be she has co-sponsored bills, but she certainly has never stepped to the forefront and been known as a champion of mental illness. And we have a severe homelessness problem here in San Francisco. And she has not She's not out there talking to those people. She's up at fancy restaurants and hotels, giving speeches to more people like herself.
So, if you don't mind, we can get into, in that case, you touched upon education and education of professionals in these, the police force in different fields, mental health fields, and healthcare. And I want to touch on, if you don't mind, the prison system and the privatization of the prison industrial complex. So people make a lot of money on mentally.
I think private prisons should be abolished. I think it is obscene for anyone to make money out of the incarceration of human beings, and there is no reason whatsoever that they need to exist. The same money that's paid to a private prison can be used to build a public prison if it's needed. But I think there's a lot of people in prison or jail right now who shouldn't be there either. So I think we need to take a very careful look at who we're locking up, what we're locking them up for, and whether or not it serves a genuine social purpose.
Well, let's look at that. So, obviously in California, you have legalized recreational marijuana. Is it up to an ounce, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, and it's going to be legalized completely the first of the year.
Excellent. We're in Tennessee here, and it's very illegal here. But
you have great whiskey there.
We do. So that's, I think it makes up for it. I don't know. But we see a lot of people, we see profiling. I want to say that it's public knowledge. We see profiling, with, stopping people because of, a nonviolent crime with marijuana and things, and then pushing other issues. And again, that we lead to these more violent situations. And, I don't want to get to hypotheticals, but again, people who are mentally unstable or mentally ill, you see these types of people, people with the issues like that, finding themselves in tough situations when it comes to the authorities.
Well, the profiling is just a pretext, a phony reason to discriminate against people of color or poor people or the mentally ill, for that matter. It's I guess I draw an analogy. It's like the policeman who stops a car because their taillight is out, and then the things escalate from there. It's just a phony reason to stop people, and I think you have to get into again police training, better police training, and the people who administer police departments have to come down on the street people very hard, to stop that kind of activity.
Do you think that
it's a cultural issue in law enforcement?
Do you think that legalizing marijuana would help? Again, in very recent days, we've heard President Trump speak about this, the opioid crisis that we're dealing with, and we deal with it specifically in Tennessee. We have a big problem with opioid addiction, and that again leads to violent crimes and other things. Do you think that has it helped in California legalizing it? Has it helped people get off the opiates and wean off their addictions, if that's the case, or stay out of prisons?
I think you should ask that question about halfway through 2018, when it's legalized in the first of the year. There's going to be dispensaries. There's going to be retail stores opening around San Francisco.
Sure.
Where you walk in and buy the stuff or buy a brownie that's full of marijuana. And I think that we should take a close look at what's happened then with the opioid crisis when marijuana becomes much more freely available. And I am for the legalization of marijuana, but I want it regulated like alcohol and tobacco. I don't want it just unregulated completely. Excellent.
If you don't mind, let's move on again to switch gears here. Global warming, climate change. Can you talk about your views on the issue?
This is a three-part. I have a three-part answer on this. One of them has to do with global warming itself. One of them has to do with what I call anti-intellectualism in the U.S., the culture, and fundamentally it gets down to our basic education. So let's talk about global warming. To me, is another one of those no-brainer issues. people deny, climate change deniers are like people who deny gravity. You can deny it, but if you step off the cliff, my friend, you're still going to fall, okay? And you can deny the facts, but that doesn't change them. And the climate is warming, and the scientific evidence is all around. So we need to do whatever is necessary as soon as possible. What I've done in my campaign is I have signed on, Tulsi Gabbard, I think, sponsored a House bill that calls for completely clean energy by 2035. That means no more fossil fuel, no more coal, no more burning anything. Wind power, solar power, and perhaps, and I underscore that, the reintroduction of nuclear power if it can be made safe, because nuclear power it is a clean form of energy. But
what do you say to the people in your constituency or in their family maybe? I know in California you guys have real jump on things in that arena. What about people that have family in Pennsylvania or in West Virginia, or places where they're mining fossil fuels and coal and natural gas, they're fracking, things like that, and they're making livings off of it, and these people will be out in the cold, and
no pun intended.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. No pun.
The fastest growing job segment in the United States pertains to the clean energy industry, solar, wind, tidal waves, and even nuclear. I think that if somebody is going to be put out of business immediately or gradually by the onset, and it is inevitable that we're going to go to clean power, that they ought to be given the opportunity or the training to transition to some kind of job which they can work on to preserve their contribution to, obviously, like earn a living, but also join the ranks of the people working in the clean energy industry. I would be very much in favor of that kind of program.
Can you touch any policy specifically?
Sorry?
Can you touch upon any policies specifically you would either support or stand up against, if you don't mind?
Well, I don't think people should be thrown out of business because they picked the coal miners should not be thrown into poverty because their mine is shut down without a viable alternative. So I would think of some kind of a law that, and I'm kind of making this up as we're going along because your question is a great one. It's making me think.
That's the idea here. I got to put the screws to somebody.
No, that's fine. I think some kind of a program that if a person is in what we'll call the fossil fuel industry or the coal industry, and they lose their job because we are transitioning to a clean industry, then I think that the federal government ought to provide them with an opportunity to transition to another occupation which allow them to keep supporting their family. That is the kind of program I have in mind.
So you're saying that retrain the market to avoid what sounds like we're heading towards, instead of to head away from an economic crash. It sounds like. And I got to tell you, out here in San Francisco, which is really as much part of Silicon Valley as Silicon Valley is, and the high tech, the effect of the loss of pretty much every kind of job you can imagine to technology, particularly robots, is being felt here. If you walk into a hospital here in San Francisco, you will find robots going up and down the hallways delivering supplies to rooms. My wife and I were walking in a shopping mall a week ago Sunday down in San Jose at Valley Fair, and a robot goes by, a security robot with cameras making a very soft sound to let people know it's coming. And instead of a security officer, there is a robot patrolling the Valley Fair Mall. And so people are losing jobs because of that. And what people are talking about here in San Francisco is what's called a robot tax, which means that if you replace, let's say, 10 jobs with one robot, and 10 people are out of work because one robot's doing what they used to do, that the company ought to be taxed in a way
that will benefit the 10 people who are losing their job.
Do you think that'll cover so it sounds like, and it's an age-old argument with automation replacing jobs nowadays. Do you think will that cover the cost enough, or so that we don't have people relying on government subsidies for basic survival?
John, I'll be honest, I don't know if that will cover all the costs, but it certainly will go a long way towards mitigating the costs. And I think it's the right thing to do in any event. I think the federal government has to show that it is concerned and is not in favor of just throwing people out of work. Perhaps if it's done right, it could substantially mitigate the cost of doing that. There's a thing you can go walk up to and put your credit card into now, and it takes the place of a Starbucks barista, and you watch this robot prepare your drink. There's a place here that where you order your eyeglasses, they feed it into a robot, and you literally watch, it's from Japan, you literally watch a robot there grind the lenses of your eyeglasses and spit them out in the frames, and there's no human involved. It's accelerating exponentially.
So that leads into another very interesting issue, and it's further than that. But immigration reform, we haven't touched on that. And being in California, you may have a different viewpoint than somebody in, say, New York or Montana, who you would, really be representing everybody and making laws that apply to everybody in the position that you're running for. So can you get into a little bit about, how you would reform the system and how it affects people there where you are, and how you see the future going?
I am very much in favor of continuing the DACA program or the DREAM program. I'm very alarmed by President Trump's animosity towards it. I am against separating, literally tearing families apart. And I mean that in a literal sense, where one family member gets deported and the other one does not. It's my experience, having lived in California for 47 years. Let me say that again. I've lived in California for 47 years, that the vast majority of immigrants are good people, hardworking people who make a positive contribution to the economy. And I would like to see a program so that people who have been here for a defined period of time, I don't know whether it's 15 years or 20 years, who have not had any trouble with law enforcement and can show that they've been working or contributing to society, can earn citizenship even if they may not have entered the country legally. And I think that we should reward those people, not punish them.
That's an interesting perspective, and it's certainly being debated very heavily these days. I want to move on again. I wish we could talk about every one of these issues in much more depth. However, I would like to talk about something that, again, I think of a lot of our viewers, look at military spending and the budgets that they have there, and then we look at our debt. And we look at these programs that we'd like to see happen, through education, and all the changes that we'd like to see, some progressive activity here in government. Tell me about military spending and how you would vote on different issues regarding that.
The military budget of $700 billion plus is obscene. That's I use that word a lot because it seems to apply to a lot of things right now. It's incredibly excessive. I would parenthetically point out my opponent voted for that budget, which I would not have done. I think it's bloated, and the topic we're talking about right now has very much to do with my foreign policy position on war, which is I'm a non-interventionist. So the U.S. does not need to be the policeman of the world. And I don't believe we should go running into every country the way we have been doing since World War II, really. And what's happened to cause this military budget is the whole concept of military necessity has been stood on its head or inverted in the last generation. And by that I mean it used to mean we made weapons so that when our military needed to go and do something, the weapons were available to them and they had the resources to do it. Now, instead of making weapons so the military can act, the military acts so we can make more weapons. The whole thing is turned on its head. We're in a perpetual state of war in order to keep the defense industries going strong, and which Republicans and some Democrats apparently think we need to do to keep our economy. We are a war-based economy right now. And what we need to do is become I won't say peace-based economy, a non-interventionist, more reasonable economy. Do you know that the latest ship in the Navy, the latest aircraft carrier, which is the Gerald R. Ford, costs just shy of $13 billion. For $13 billion, we could probably put every single high school graduate through community college and get their AA degree for that same $13 billion. You know,
And your opponent voted for these bills, if I believe. Is that correct?
Like a clock.
Like a clock. Oh.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. I would not have voted for that bill. I would not have voted for that bill.
Well,
Because I am not beholden to any defense industry contributions.
excellent.
I don't have any donors to please.
I appreciate that.
I take that back. I have individual donors to please, no corporation industries.
Good. And I want to respect your time. I know you have a hard stop now, and I hope we can do this again. And hopefully after you're elected, hopefully before and after you're elected.
There's a lot of time before that, and if you'd like to do it again, I enjoyed our talk, and I hope we can do it again in the foreseeable future.
It has been a pleasure. My name again is Jonathan Rizzo. I'm here with Aaron Albritton, sitting in here for Amanda Cumming, and I would like to thank Stephen Jaffe here. He's got a tough race ahead of him, but we look forward to it, and we look forward to supporting him in any way we can. We try not to take too many sides here, but when you see a good horse in the race, you want to get behind it. So I urge you all, anybody watching, to look further into Stephen Jaffe here. And
Can you give a pitch to my donate site?
That would be great. But yeah, feel free to tell people where they can find you.
If anything I have said resonates with any of you folks, go to donate.jaffe for Congress, JAFFE, the number 4 Congress.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Jaffe. It's been a pleasure. I'm Jonathan Rizzo. Again, this is the Independent Progressive, and we try to really put the screws to the people representing you, or trying or looking to represent you. All the politicians either sitting in office right now or candidates looking to sit in office. If you have any questions that you'd like us to ask, or anybody that you would like us to ask, we're always open to suggestions, and we're here for you all. So we want to show everybody that there is a way you can ask. These people represent us. All right, they are, they work for us, and we are the people. We really need to take that seriously. So many people like to rant on Facebook, or they call them Monday morning quarterbacks here, and we really want to take the opportunity to ask real questions to the people who are making decisions and representing us. So please stay involved.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to have been here, and I have one last thing to say.
Please do.
I want that bow tie.
Ah, my Lego bow tie. Oh, I'll get you one when you get in office.
Just kidding. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Jaffe, and it's been a pleasure, and we'll talk to you soon.